Presentation tonight, the field of neurology, science of the nervous system. The object in point, a microscopic cross-section of a neuron, a nerve cell. The case in point, Frank Elwin Summers. He's 49 years of age, married, and a father. A newspaper man for 30 years, Summers is not editor of a metropolitan morning paper. He's a careful, systematic man whose life centers around his home and his family. He takes every reasonable precaution to keep himself in good physical condition. But it's debatable that a man has much to say about his destiny. In a very short time, Frank Summers will have nothing at all to say about his.
You want to check this wire copy, Mr. Summers?
Mm-hmm. That's all there is. You can go on home.
Thanks. Good night.
Night.
Night, Frank.
Night. Oh, by the way, Bill, if I'm a few minutes late tomorrow, cover for me, will you? My boy's graduating from high school. We're giving a little party for him.
Congratulations. Ella must be proud.
She is. You know, he's got a scholarship at Banner Tech. Starts next fall.
Still want to be a physicist?
What he knows already scares me. Every time we get a break on a new atomic weapon, Phil has to explain it to me.
Well, I'm glad to hear of someone going into a respectable business. Don't worry, Frank. I'll cover for you.
Thanks.
Hi, Frank.
Hi.
Say, Frank, wasn't that Harrison from the wire service that came up to see you tonight?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse my asking, but was it about a job?
There's an opening in the Paris office.
Are you going to take it?
No, it's not for me. You go 3 months, 6 months, you might be looking for a new job. Believe me, there's no security in that.
Well, I figured that you wouldn't, and I thought that... Well, look, I know I haven't got anywhere near the experience that you have, but I speak a little French, and I thought maybe you could put in a word for me.
If I have a chance, I'll mention it.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks a lot. Say, got a light?
Sure.
You know, he could have been one of the biggest men in the newspaper business. Security. He's just got no push.
He's got a wife and kid. I'm thinking of getting married myself. When you've got a family, you've got to think about security.
Feels like a depressed fracture.
Hemiplegia.
Concussion, possible depressed fracture, probably an extradural hematoma. Prepare a cut down. We'll get some whole blood going.
We're going to elevate the fracture.
Well, he's in shock. We'll have to get the blood pressure up a little and then get an x-ray. I'll go and talk to the wife.
Dr. Watkins?
Mrs. Summers?
Yes. How is he, Doctor?
Well, he hasn't regained consciousness. It's impossible to tell just yet how extensive the damage is.
But he's going to live?
He may have a depressed fracture of the skull. We're getting an x-ray now. If he does, we'll have to elevate the fracture to remove the pressure on the brain. It'll be a while before we have our answer. I'll let you know as soon as I've seen the x-rays.
Doctor, would you tell him if he wakes up, that I made our boy go to school for his graduation today. I know it's what Frank would want. Tell him that if he wakes up, he'll want to know.
All right, Mrs. Summers.
Frank's always been so strong. A thing like this could possibly...
The x-rays will tell us a lot more, Mrs. Summers.
Laswell. Dr. Laswell.
They must have hit him with a sledgehammer.
Doctor, the nurse called and said he'd regained consciousness.
Yes, he has.
Oh, thank heaven. I was so worried. It's been 3 days. He's definitely out of danger now.
Well, he's in no immediate danger, Mrs. Summers.
Can I see him?
There are a few things I'd like to discuss with you.
Well, just let me tell him I'm here. Frank, I was so worried. How do you feel, darling? Frank, what's the matter? Doctor, what is it?
I tried to tell you, Mrs. Summers. Your husband can't speak just yet. I think you'd better come outside with me.
Why did they tell me he'd regained consciousness?
He has, Mrs. Summers. He's regained consciousness. It's just that he can't speak. Part of the brain is damaged. It's a condition we call aphasia.
Tell me the truth, Doctor. I have a right to know.
I can't tell you how extensive the damage is or how permanent. I wish I could offer you more hope, but I simply don't know yet. There are a whole series of tests we'll have to run. Tests that will tell us the extent of brain damage and help us determine the amount of motor weakness. Tests to determine whether his intellectual activity is impaired. Some of the disability may be expected to disappear spontaneously. Some damage may be permanent. The hemiplegia, that is the paralysis of his right side, has already begun to clear by itself. There may be some residual weakness of the muscles, but not enough to handicap him.
Then why isn't he able to speak? What exactly is the matter with him?
He has motor aphasia, agraphia, and alexia. That's a technical way of saying that he's lost the power to speak, to write, and to read.
Then you mean that his mind is definitely...
No, His intellectual capacity seems completely unimpaired. It's just that he has no way of communicating.
But even if he can't talk, he can still move his hands. Why can't he write?
Well, the damage isn't to the hands or to the eyes or to the vocal cords. The damage is to parts of the brain that control all those functions. It's not easy to explain, Mrs. Summers. Look, think of the brain as sort of a central exchange in a telephone company with thousands upon thousands of connections going to every part of the country. Now, when the lines are functioning properly, you can establish instantaneous communications anywhere. When there's an accident to the switchboard, communications break down. That's a very rough analogy because the human brain is infinitely more complex than any telephone switchboard.
How can everything break down without his mind being destroyed?
There are many parts to the mind, many functions. A baby's mind starts as a blank. Everything we learn forms a kind of pattern on the neurons, the telephone wires of the body. Hearing, seeing, speaking. Any skill we learn gradually builds up definite pathways in the neurons so that the activities become almost automatic. For instance, when we speak, we don't have to think of how tight the vocal cords should be drawn, how the mouth should be shaped, where the tongue should be held, or how much air the diaphragm should push past the vocal cords to form speech. Yet all of these activities take place in saying a simple word like mama. Now, your husband's accident damaged the centers or pathways of speech, writing, and reading. In other words, the directions for all these carefully learned skills can no longer travel over the established network. In everything else, your husband is a highly intelligent adult male. But in these three functions, he starts out on the level of a newborn baby.
You mean he'll have to learn to think all over again?
You're confusing thinking with communicating, Mrs. Summers. They're quite different. A child sees a hairy, four-footed animal. He learns to recognize it. He learns it's called a dog. And ultimately, he learns that it bears certain similarities to other four-footed animals, also called dogs. The child then has the concept of dogs. When he sees a dog, he knows that it's a dog similar to the first one. He learns to pronounce the name dog and to write it out, D-O-G. Now, in your husband's case, the communication centers are damaged so that it's impossible for him to say dog, to write dog, or to recognize dog when he sees it written. I want you to understand the magnitude of his problem, Mrs. Summers, but you must also understand that it's not a hopeless one. A great deal of retraining is possible.
And he'll be able to speak again?
I think there's a good chance. It'll depend on his will to relearn, on you, on his family. He needs a strong incentive. It's a long, hard fight for a man to make, doubly hard for a man who's still highly intelligent to have to start out again at a pre-kindergarten level.
But you can repair the damage.
Not repair, Mrs. Summers, but we can train new pathways. Your husband is right-handed. Like most people, the left hemisphere of the brain is the dominant. It's the side that controlled all those complicated skills. It's also the side that was damaged. Now, some of that damage may be reversible, and it's also possible to train the undamaged right side to take over part of the work. It's possible. It isn't easy.
How long would it take?
With luck, perhaps a year.
A year? A whole year? How much would it cost?
A great deal, I'm afraid. Your husband's case will require constant work. He'll have to go to a private clinic or sanitarium that's equipped to do this special training.
We haven't very much money, Doctor.
We'll try to work something out, and of course I'll help in any way I can.
Will he ever be the same?
Miss Summers, after an experience like this, nobody's ever quite the same. But with luck and a lot of help, he should regain enough function to lead a full, normal life. It'll take time, it'll take money, and it'll take work, a lot of hard work.
Dad. You're looking fine, just fine. I just wanted to tell you that everything's going to be all right at home. Got a job. I know you count on me going to college, Dad, but there'll be plenty of time for that later, honest. It's a good experience for me to do a little work. You know how you're always trying to tell me the value of a dollar? Now I got a chance to learn. Mama's talked to them at the book department at Almira's. She wants to work part-time. You just get yourself well, Dad. We're doing fine, just fine, and we want you to come home real soon. Well, I'll see you later, Dad. Told him. I could tell he didn't like it. Doctor, there must be something you can do. It's horrible to have to look at him like that, just lying there.
It's pretty horrible for him, too, Phil. He's trapped behind an invisible wall, unable to say a thing to a single living soul. It's very lonely.
I know that. I told him it doesn't make any difference about us, about how I feel.
His rehabilitation and retraining can start next week at the sanitarium. His first problem will be to regain the use of his right side. This part, the process of regaining the strength of the muscles, is relatively easy. As the edema in the brain subsides, much of the movement will return spontaneously. He'll probably never regain 100% use of his right hand, but the paralysis is clearing rapidly. Here he meets other aphasics and learns that he's not alone with his problem, that he's far luckier than some whose damage can't be reversed. At last, when he's well enough to care for himself, to live at home, returning to the sanitarium only during the day, he begins the really difficult part of his training.
Cup. Fine.
The discouraging, endless process of relearning to read and write and talk. The battle to achieve the simple things which we take for granted. A man's universe shrinks to the dimensions of his own needs. The slightest advance is so fiercely fought for that it seems a smashing victory. It's difficult for those who love the patient to share his joy in an accomplishment one would expect from an 18-month baby. Aphasia presents a terrible strain in which the family and friends must guard on the one hand against over-expectation and on the other against discouraging the patient.
Hello, I'm fine. Hello, I'm fine.
That's excellent, but I think we'd better stop. Better not overdo.
Hello, I'm fine. Hello, I'm fine. Hello, I'm fine.
Yeah, well, I know you told me. Sure I do. Gee, Doris, I'd love to, but I just can't. This is Mother's night at the store. I know it is, honey, and I'd like to more than anything, but somebody's got to look after Dad. You know we don't dare leave him alone. If he got sick and needed something, why... Well, he's helpless. I know it is, Doris.
I don't know what to do, Doctor. He won't even look at me.
Has he eaten anything yet?
Not since he's come back to the sanitarium.
I wouldn't have done anything in the world to hurt Dad. I sure didn't mean it the way it sounded, like he was crazy or something.
Well, actually, there's no reason why he can't be left alone now. What you said wouldn't have upset a healthy person, Phil. You've got to realize how frustrated and useless your father feels. It's not unusual for a patient to be depressed during the course of retraining, but this is a withdrawal from something in reality which frightens him.
He's probably worrying a lot about money, too, Doctor. He always has. I thought when he came home, he'd feel better about all of us being together. He used to say that a family holding together was the only security people have.
Was your husband an only child, Mrs. Summers?
He was an orphan.
I see. Then it's natural that family and security would mean a great deal to him.
He used to say that the most difficult thing was for a man to have to face life alone.
Good evening, Mr. Summers. You're feeling very sorry for yourself, aren't you? You've had a tough break. Now you're all alone. If you'd been hit a little lower and a little harder, you'd probably be dead, but you weren't. And now you feel you're a burden to your family. You're all alone behind a wall of silence. And you are alone. Every man is alone. But you're in a position to realize it. Our whole lives are spent in trying to build up security, Mr. Summers. Security is our mother, our friends, our business associates, our wives, our children. But actually, every man is all alone. He's connected to his friends and family by a series of tenuous little nerve pathways. You've seen how easily these pathways can be damaged. Each man must live within himself. His security must be built within himself, in his own mind. Once a man has security within himself, nothing can shake it. I don't say that the things outside aren't important, but until a man has inner security, he can't fully appreciate his friends or his family. or the world. You'll be able to reestablish contact with the outside world, Mr. Summers. You keep working the way you've been working, and you'll be out of here in a few months. But until you reestablish contact, you've only yourself. You might almost regard it as an opportunity, Mr. Summers. So many people go through their entire lives without ever getting to know themselves. Miss Blanchard will expect you in speech therapy in the morning. Yes, Mrs. Summers, he's showing remarkable improvement. His speech and writing are coming along well.
Potatoes.
He's beginning to read. Within a few months, he should be able to carry on simple conversations.
Frank.
Hello, Ella. I'm glad to see you.
I'm glad to see you, darling.
And to hear me.
Yes, darling. Very, very glad to hear you.
I'm glad he finally decided to go back to the paper.
For 3 months, Doctor. That's as long as he'd agree to. After that, he's going to try the wire service job.
I'll take these down to the car, Dad.
All right, Phil, thanks.
Frank, you've made a remarkable recovery. I don't have to remind you how hard the struggle was, and it's not finished yet. You've got to expect a lot of emotional problems. No matter how well you adjust, it may be difficult for others to readjust to you, even at your old job. When you talk about going to a different country and plunging into something new...
I plunged into something entirely new over a year ago. You're right, Doctor. It wasn't easy. But I learned something along the way, or you taught me something. Security is inside. I'm going to do what I've always wanted. At least on a trial basis. Now, maybe it won't work. Maybe I can't handle it. And maybe we won't like Paris. At least I can say I tried.
Well, I'd advise you to wait and see how you make out at the paper before you come to any decision. You have your family to consider, too.
Oh, I think every man deserves a chance, Doctor. Even a long shot. We're going to sell the house. I've had 2 good offers for it already. They're giving Phil his scholarship despite the delay. He goes to college next month.
Well, perhaps you can do it. But I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't warn you you're fighting off a lot of problems.
Well, the paper can always use men of Frank's experience. If the worst comes to the worst, we'll have had a wonderful holiday.
It won't come to the worst.
I've been out buying books for us. Just to make things more difficult, we're going to have to learn French.
Learning French would be a cinch to a man who's just learned how to speak English.
Already, Dad.
Thanks, Phil. You know, it's funny. I spent a whole year relearning how to talk. Now I can't say any of the things I want to do. Just say thanks.
I wish you luck, both of you.
Are you really worried about him, Doctor?
A little. He's got a long, hard fight ahead. But I think he's got his security pretty well in hand.